The 1940s. What do you think of when you hear the 1940s? Do you think of big band, Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy, the World War, 1941, Pearl Harbor? A lot of things we might think about, right? Both my parents were born in the 40s. I bet you didn't realize, though, in the 1940s, Pat O'Brien invented a drink called the Hurricane in New Orleans. Why? Because he wanted to get rid of some excess rum. And the name because the glass looks like it's served in a hurricane-shaped glass. Well, today's sip, everybody, we are switching from coffee to a hurricane to talk a little bit about where was leadership in Hurricane Milton.
Hi, I'm Carlin Holbrook. I'm a John Maxwell Team certified coach, teacher, trainer, speaker, published author, and influencer with more than 25 years of global leadership experience. If there's one thing I've seen firsthand time and time again, it's that the best leaders inspire others to follow their purpose and their passions, while the influence of a bad leader can literally tear down people's potential. Join me for a few sips of leadership tips that will help you become a better leader by first conquering the hardest person to lead, you.
Well, it is no secret that we learn who the leaders are and who the leaders are not in times of adversity, in times of chaos, in times of unexpected things and plans, and when the world turns upside down. I mean, really, it's like I've said it a million times and I believe it. We learn who the best and the worst leaders are in those times of adversity. And oftentimes we learn more from the worst leaders than we do the best leaders. Ironic? Yes. But it's the truth, right? You learn a lot from bad examples, just like you learn a lot from good examples. So where were some of the good and bad examples during, well, let's go from Helene to Milton since they were back to back. I live in Florida, as most of you probably know. So we are very familiar with hurricanes out here, and also very familiar with the fact that meteorologists do the best they can, but nobody can predict the weather. Nobody can predict, control, know what the heck the weather's going to do. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care about all these people who complain, say, I'm a scientist and I know this and I know that. And remember, some of the best scientists in the world used to think the world was flat too, and thought leeches were a good idea and thought cocaine was a great drug to use on you. So I don't put all of my stake in experts, quote unquote. And nowadays it's even more difficult because everybody's an expert. Everybody knows things. Everybody is a know-it-all, because now in the wonderful world of social media, which again, I do enjoy social media, but I take it for what it's worth. But in this wonderful world, everybody's an armchair quarterback. All right, so do you know what that is? This is probably aging myself again as a Gen Xer, but an armchair quarterback it's an idiom that describes that someone offering opinions or advice on a subject that they have no expertise or involvement in. I'm reading a little AI, overview of where I found on the internet. Where the term originated from was in the U.S., and it's based on the American football sport, where the quarterback controls much of the game. The term also can refer to the act of watching a game and thinking that you have all the information and knowledge that that person should have done this and they should have done that, when obviously most people are watching the game from their couch and a television set. It's also related to the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is a cognitive bias that occurs when people with limited knowledge or competence in a certain area overestimate their abilities. This effect is named after Cornell University psychologists David Dunning and Justin Kruger, who first described it in 1999. So there you go. A little learning today if you didn't know where that came from. But when you see things like the Hurricanes Helene as well as Milton coming through, my gosh, could everybody in other states that aren't impacted play more armchair quarterback? I mean, just watching, everybody has an opinion. What is wrong with you? Like getting mad at people because they didn't evacuate. Getting mad at people or making fun of Floridians, because yes, there's definitely weirdos in every state. Okay, let's just call a spade a spade. I'm from California. You don't get any weirder than the people in California. But what frustrates me more than anything is when people are talking about stuff they know nothing about. So, for example, I saw so many people trying to kind of myth bust what it means to be here during a hurricane, what really happens. Because what's so interesting is, like, of course, when I'm in, Florida, you're seeing it everywhere in the news. It's all over the place. Your algorithm is blowing up with a hurricane. But in a lot of other states, you're not seeing it as much. You're seeing local news. You're seeing things that impact their state, not others. So they're probably getting piecemeal things here and there. They're not seeing, like, the whole landscape. So when people think they know what's happening, you don't really know unless you're on the ground in that situation, in that place. So, for example, people are like, well, why didn't you evacuate? I got a lot of text messages. Again, well-meaning friends and family. Are you leaving? Are you getting out? Are you evacuating? Well, no, because we're not in an evacuation zone. And people who are not in evacuation zones, well, I don't want to hit the road where other people who really, really have to hit the road and get the heck out of Dodge because they are in the direct line of fire of a hurricane, especially the coastal areas. And then you watch the bridges and you watch the roads and traffic become hours and hours and hours of people trying to get out. Well, me being in Orlando in Central Florida, not in an evacuation place, that would just put one more car on the road. And to go where? With my cats, my mother-in-law, my husband, and I. Where are we going? To some hotel in Georgia? No, we look at what's happening. We assess. We also pray and think, okay, what is the best thing for our family? So anybody that wants to, go sit in Utah or California or Washington or Minnesota and go, oh, those guys are a bunch of idiots because they didn't evacuate. Okay, well, what would happen if you tried to evacuate the entire state of Florida? Seriously, do you even think that would have been possible? It's a huge state, a lot of people, everyone hitting the road at the same time. No, let's leave the evacuation routes open for the people who really do need to get the heck out of harm's way. The other thing I was watching is, again, people think they know what happens in a hurricane or not. How do you hunker down? How do you not? What do you do? Do you board up your house? Do you sit in a closet? Do you get away from windows? I mean, it's almost like it's like myth busting, and it makes me laugh because it's like, I mean, it's same with earthquakes. I grew up in California where it was earthquakes, right? I mean, I remember the days where it was just, just tuck your head under a table and you're fine. Or go stand in a door jamb and you're fine. And it's like, okay, yeah, the door jamb thing. I mean, maybe structurally it might be safer than standing by a window, but there's so many things like that people think is what's going to help. But it's like you're not helping when you're armchair quarterbacking from 7 states away, thinking you know everything. And then people started to actually get critical of people in Florida. And then my favorite lack of leadership. So to me, that's right, all that armchair quarterbacking, not leadership. It's making assumptions. It's projecting your own thoughts, experience, and bias on something you don't know anything about. So stop doing it about everything. It drives me nuts. And then the next thing where you see is, oh my gosh, all the politicians politicizing natural disasters. It's disgusting. And it's everybody. I'm not even going to pick on one or the other. I mean, I don't care what anyone says. The government did not show up for North Carolina, and they still have not shown up for North Carolina. And that's just fact, okay? And I know that is fact. I'm not armchair quarterbacking. I know people literally impacted there. But what is kind of cool to see is what people need to stop leaning on the government and expecting them to save them for everything. The communities, the organizations, the nonprofits, they're all turning up. They're all turning up and they're helping out their own communities and people. But why aren't we telling those stories? Why aren't we showing those stories? Well, because there's no drama in that. It's not, Kamala versus Trump and Waltz versus Vance and Biden versus, it's not drama. If it bleeds, it leads, and it's like, I wish they would show more of those stories where somebody out there, is getting their boat and going and picking people up, or somebody's using their own helicopter to come in and bring supplies. And just like the Good Samaritans, like those are the stories we should be telling. And by the way, that's leadership, right? People who are stepping up and saying, okay, what can I do? What can I do to help my community, to help my fellow humans? As opposed to sitting back and just having opinions over the internet and jumping on one wagon or the other and criticizing what's going on when you're not even trying to help yourself. You're just sitting back and you're armchair quarterbacking, It's like nobody needs your opinions. It's not helpful. It's putting noise out in the universe. Nobody needs it. And for the politicians who want to politicize everything, now is not the time. Oh my gosh, I don't care if the election is like less than a month away. This is not the time. In those moments, everybody should just be putting their crap aside, rolling up their sleeves, and going, what can we do to help? What can we do to take the help or not take the help? And everyone's also criticizing Governor DeSantis because he said, nope, stay out of it, Washington. And it's like, it's not about stubborn and ego. And again, armchair quarterbacking. It's about, in the past, they never did crap to help. So he's like, you know what, we got this. But then he did have a conversation and get more, support and stuff too. So it's like, well, good. Everyone can set aside their differences and take the support where you need it, right? That's humility. That's leadership. So just a long way to say, man, when we look at everything over there, out there, people's opinions about everything, it's like you gotta just stop acting like you're an expert in something or something that you have no involvement in. Why are you even commenting on it? It has nothing to do with you. Instead, put out positivity, put out what can I do to help? And if there isn't anything you can financially or physically do, prayers are good. People do appreciate the thoughts, the prayers, the hope, all of that. Put out that into the universe, into social media, onto the internet. And then do what you can do in your control as opposed to criticizing what everybody else is doing, which is completely out of your control. All right, let's get into some hurricane sips. First sip. In anything, whether it's a natural disaster or some kind of chaotic, unplanned, nutty event out there, just reserve judgment. Instead of jumping to conclusions, seek to understand. Find the right information. And if you don't, then don't comment. And I know I've said this before, but look far and wide for information. Look across multiple news sources, whether you consider them left-leaning or right-leaning or middle-leaning or whatever. Look across all of it. I follow everybody and I gather lots of information. And then ultimately, yes, you can make up your own mind. You should have beliefs and values and stick by them. But not everyone in the world needs to know them. It's okay to keep some things to yourself, especially if it's not helpful. All right, second sip. Choose the role that you'll play in times of adversity. And I think people do not take this as something that they can be intentional about because they're in a reactive emotional state. It comes back to, as a leader, you've got to separate the two. You've got to take a step back. It's okay to feel the feelings. It's okay to have those feelings. I know, like at the start of all of this track and Milton stuff, definitely felt anxiety in my stomach, definitely felt nervousness and worry. And then I would take some deep breaths. I would say a prayer. For me, that helps. And go, okay, what is in my control, right? I can't control a big ass storm's coming my way. But what I can control is how do I prepare mentally, physically, prepare my home, prepare my loved ones, all of that. You choose the role you're going to play. I'm going to play a role as a leader. I'm going to also step outside of my own four walls and say, what can I do to help you over there and you over there? Check in on people. Send text messages, send notes. Hey, how are you doing? Before, during, and after. That's the role of leadership. I heard this analogy recently that I thought was amazing. That was an analogy about a good leader is like a sturdy oak tree, because oaks can hold up in storms like most other trees cannot, because their roots run really deep and they really latch onto the ground. I think that's an important thing for a leader to be. A leader needs to be a sturdy oak. It doesn't mean that your branches aren't going to sway. It doesn't mean that, might get a little moss on some, might have a few nests here and there. You're going to feel some things in your leaves, right? But what it means is at the end of the day, people know to look to you, that you're going to be grounded and you are there, that you can help, and you are going to be intentional about the role of being a sturdy leader in times of adversity. And it means you're going to be resourceful, kind of like the inventor of the hurricane drink. He had a bunch of excess rum, decided to play around in mixology in a fun glass, and look at today, it's still a popular drink in some bars, You got to be resourceful. All right, final sip. I think this is, just generally speaking, a very good thing. I know I talked about this in my optics newsletter, if you read my newsletter on LinkedIn, but it's, you know what, mind your own business. It's like, I remember my mom as a kid would say a lot of times, when we had opinions about other friends, family, or other things, she'd just say, mind your own business. Just mind your own business. It's like a lost art because everybody thinks everybody's business is their business, because people choose to put their business on social media, online, out there for the world to see. But I don't think we all thought that, oh, well, that means everybody can now have an opinion on my business. I mean, that is the nature, I get it, two-way of social media. But this is where leaders, I feel like you separate the wheat from the chaff with leaders. Leaders know when it's their business versus not their business, and what's in your control versus not in your control. And there's so much out there. It's just not your business. So why are you commenting? Why are you armchair quarterbacking something that you know nothing about? You don't even know any people affected by it. Totally not involved. It's like sitting here in our, lovely country that we are still very fortunate to be in, and armchair quarterbacking what's going on in the Middle East. It's like, do you have a clue? You just make assumptions based on a few posts from some celebrities that think, oh, let's do this, or I agree with this or not. It's like, mind your business. If you can't be constructive to be like, you know what can I do to help people who are hurting? What can I do to support people who have other people who are hurting? Then just let it go. Go about. Save the quarterbacking for actual American football players. Nobody needs armchair quarterbacks. The world's got enough of them. So stand apart by being a leader. Be a quarterback of your own life. And to everyone out there who has experienced devastating loss from Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton, my heart does go out to you. My thoughts, my prayers, my donations to reputable organizations that I do hope helps the cleanup efforts. And, my friends, my family, my colleagues all know, and if you're listening to this too, you need a place to stay if you're still out of power. I got a guest room, got plenty of room, opening up my house. I just hope that people, again, can set aside what they think shoulda, woulda, coulda, and stop shooting all over people and themselves to just be humans again and recognize that there are times when you'll be going through some kind of unplanned natural disaster, because we live on a living, breathing planet, and these things do happen. And who will you decide to be? What kind of leader are you going to be in the midst of that? Because people are watching, people are listening, people are paying attention. And it's up to us to show other people how to lead through times of adversity. Thank you for having a cup of coffee with me. For more sips and tips, connect with me on social and follow Leader Sips on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest. And don't forget to visit my website, carlynnholbrook.com. Until next time, keep on brewing.